Greetings and salutations, this is Akirishin. In this video, by request, I will be featuring the Tier 8 American Multirole fighter, the Republic XP-72. As you can see, this is a very attractive looking aircraft. It's got the cockpit that I like, that is sitting on top of the airframe rather than built into it, as some aircraft do. It's got the double propellers here, which is a feature I really like. The Seafang has that similar design, as does, we've got the XP-75 premium heavy fighter down here that has that. But this aircraft just looks like it would wreak havoc on trains and factories and all sorts of structures of that sort. So some general features about this aircraft. It has powerful machine guns that are effective against aircraft with high survivability, so your heavy fighters, maybe your bombers, your ground attack aircraft. These machine guns are indicated to be very effective against those types of aircraft. As with any fighter, it has low survivability and it often catches fire. So we'll talk about what consumables and upgrades we have to try to deal with that situation. It is listed as having a high airspeed with a long-lasting boost, and when we get in game, I'll show you exactly the length of that boost. It is not a highly maneuverable aircraft, so it is not going to be able to hold its own with any type of turn and burn fighter. So keep that in mind as you're, deciding how and when you want to enter into combat. You want to choose that moment carefully and strategically. It is effective in mid-altitude combat. We'll go over the stats on that here shortly. And of course attacking small amounts of ground targets. So it's not a ground attack aircraft, but it can take on some ground targets and contribute to that effort, but not dominate it. And it carries bombs and rockets. So let's look at those. And we have the HVAR MK25 5-inch rockets that each do 1500 damage and have a damage radius of 30 meters. So, these are not over-the-top rockets, but they can take out targets like anti-aircraft, lightly armored ground targets such as that. And then we have 500-pound bombs, which are effective against armored ground targets. And they have a large blast radius of 75 meters, and they do 4,300 in damage. So these bombs are, you can use to attack some of the more hardened targets. But you only have 2 of those, so you've got to choose when you use them wisely. And of course we have the 12.7 millimeter machine guns, which are very good at, you can sustain fire without having them overheat. You know, as you've seen in many of the videos where aircraft have cannons, they can overheat quickly, but these would not. And they are effective against maneuvering targets. And part of that is that, you know, they have such a high rate of fire, 1,200 rounds per minute. You can put a lot of rounds out there, so your chances of hitting a, you know, zigging and zagging, weaving, you know, target are significantly higher than if you had, you know, some low rate of fire cannons. So in terms of upgrades for this aircraft, I have gone with the standard Control Surface Adjustment 3, which increases maneuverability in turns by 3%, and Lightweight Airframe 3, which increases maneuverability in all axes by 3%. Now these are, you know, on some of the fighters I've reviewed that are more turn and burn fighters, these two upgrades are kind of overkill in the maneuverability department, but with this aircraft these items are essential because it does have that low effectiveness in maneuvering combat. So if you can improve upon that, at least I like to do so. To try to help ameliorate the problem with the aircraft tending to catch fire, we have gone with the self-sealing fuel tank 4, which reduces the chance of fire and damage caused by fire by 50%. This, you know, interestingly enough, the self-sealing fuel tanks were a very important addition to aircraft in World War II, greatly reducing fires and such on aircraft, which I'm sure the pilots welcomed quite a bit. Alright, so in terms of ammunition, I have gone with the universal ammunition, and you know, this universal ammunition is not so universal. If you review my past videos, you will see variants depending upon the aircraft we're dealing with of the so-called universal ammunition. For example, most of the ammunition for the universal that we have reviewed in the past on other aircraft either have an equal amount of chance of fire and chance of crit, or only 2 into 2 of the little bubbles or whatever they are there into chance of fire, and versus 4 on the critical chance. In this aircraft, you see that the chance of fire is accentuated. Now, what I suspect is that the powers that be know that this aircraft is, its machine guns have a very, very high rate of fire, the 1,200 rounds per minute, which is, you know, extremely high. And so they have modified this universal ammunition to take that into account. If you were going to go with any of the gold ammunition, you would most assuredly want to go with the high explosive incendiary to take advantage of that high rate of fire, the 1,200 rounds per minute. Okay. Again, to deal with the fire, we have gone with the automatic fire extinguisher consumable. It activates, as the name says, automatically. You do not have to do it manually. That is why I buy this particular gold upgrade, because the non-gold you have to activate it manually, and I tend to forget. I just kind of burn. So to help me out with that, I do get the automatic fire extinguisher on that. And likewise with the first aid kit. On reinforced control surfaces, I went with the non-gold version of that. because either way you activate that skill, that consumable, manually, so it doesn't. There's not really any big advantage in getting the gold, except that the gold does have a 30-second shorter cooldown. So if that's important to you, then that would be a consideration. For me, the extra 30 seconds probably won't make that big of a difference. And I have just cursed myself because we know, having said that, it will make a difference. Alright, so you're currently looking at the summer paint scheme, which is my favorite paint scheme for this particular aircraft. This is the winter. Kind of reminds me of the look of the Kai with that black stripe down the center, and this is more of a gray versus the Kai 94-2's white. All right, and then let's see here. This is desert. Honestly, it's kind of hard to see the difference between the desert and the winter. Not a huge difference, I suppose. This section right here is different. And this is the marine version. But we'll go back to the summer version because I like looking at it. Okay, so in terms of pilot skills, I only have 1 point with this pilot at the moment, and I did choose to spend that on fire resistance, which reduces fire duration and damage by 20%, and that's to try to deal with the fact that this aircraft does tend to catch fire. When I have sufficient points, I'll reset this and put the points into Aerobatics Expert, which increases maneuverability in all axes by 2%, and Aerodynamics Expert, which accentuates the effects of our lightweight airframe and controls surface adjustment upgrades that we have, and it does that by 40% of the effects of those 2 upgrades. Alright, looking at this aircraft's stats, these expanded here for you. And you see that the optimal airspeed for this aircraft is 500 kilometers per hour. The optimal altitude is 1800 kilometers per hour. So, it is a mid-altitude fighter, essentially. Your higher altitude fighters would be, 2200 meters, 2500 meters plus. So this is at a middle of the road, 1800 meters in altitude. Okay, so we will now take a look at this aircraft as compared to other aircraft, so that you can kind of see how this, how the XP-72 kind of fits into in relation to other fighters, multi-role fighters, and we'll do that right now. Okay, so we are on World of Warplanes website, and we are using the feature they make accessible to us to compare various different aircraft one to the other. And I have the Republic XP-72 here in the first slot, and there are I believe 2 pages of these planes, and we'll just handle them one at a time here. Currently in view is the Sukhoi Su-9 multi-role fighter and the Mikoyan Gurevich I-260 multi-role fighter. Now, when you make these comparisons, you want to make sure that all of the upgraded options have been configured. All right. Anything to upgrade there? Okay, that's because it's a premium aircraft. So just looking at these three aircraft, we can see that, and if you just hover over the stat, for example, gun armament, you will see that both the Sukhoi Su-9 and the Mikoyan Gurevich I-260 both have superior armament firepower as compared to that of the XP-72. So if you've played the XP-72 and you perceive it to be its gunfire capability to be a little underwhelming, you can kind of see why that might be in comparison to other aircraft. In terms of bombs and rockets, this is where the XP-72 excels over the Sukhoi Su-9 and the Mikoyan Gurevich I-260. In terms of survivability, again, the XP-72 has the edge over those two other aircraft. And you can see here that the XP-72 has greater hit points than the Su-9 and the Mikoyan Gurevich I-260. Airspeed is relatively similar for these aircraft, a little bit less for the Su-9. Let's see here. And the optimal airspeed for this aircraft, you can see that the XP-72 is faster in that regard than the Su-9 and the Mikoyan Gurevich I-260. The XP-72 and the Mikoyan Gurevich I-260 are both, I would say, upper middle in terms of altitude performance. 1800 is not that high. It would certainly not be your high altitude performer type stat, which would be more around the 2200 to 2500 range. And of course the Su-9 has a lower optimum altitude than the XP-72. So that kind of gives you some perspective as to the XP-72 as compared to the Su-9 and the I-260. So what we'll do now is we'll just get rid of those two aircraft off our compare list here. And we see here that we've got the Seafang and the J7W1 Shinden. And we want to again make sure that we have the upgraded component there. Let's see, this is, what is that? I believe that is a rocket. Is it? Yeah, that's those are the rockets, so we definitely would prefer to, at least I would prefer to equip that. The J7W1, get that all upgraded there. Okay, so in terms of gun armament, both the Seafang and the J7W1 have the edge on the XP-72. The J7W1 has a significant, a 28-point advantage over the XP-72. In terms of bombs and rockets, here is where the XP-72 crushes the Seafang and crushes the J7W1 with 23. Let me see here, make this a little larger for us. With a 23-point advantage over the Seafang and a 27-point advantage over the J7W1. The J7W1 just has like, a couple of bombs, and that's it. Survivability, the XP-72 has slight advantages over the Seafang and the J7W1, and you can see that with the hit points here, where the XP-72 has 100 points above both the Seafang and the Shinden. In terms of optimum airspeed, the XP-72 definitely outshines the Seafang and the J7W1 in that regard by a huge margin, really. Here, 54 points for the Seafang, 95 points for the J7W1. And optimal airspeed is again, XP-72 has a huge advantage. Optimal altitude has a huge advantage over the J7W1 and the Seafang there. Stall speed, stall speed is important because the higher the stall speed, the more likely you are to stall out. And you can see that the XP-72 does lag behind both the J7W1 and the Seafang in that area. Okay, so we'll further reduce our list here. Oops, I went too far. Let's get that one back. So, and by the way, this is how you add aircraft to the compare list. So we'll choose we had a German multirole up there. Go down here, the Blom und Voss P210. So we'll hit the compare button there. All right, and then we'll just off of that. And where did it go? Let's try that again here. There we go. Hit the compare button. All right, and that will add that aircraft. Let's refresh this page here. For some reason it's not showing up the way that it should. Okay. Sorry here, having some technical difficulties. Alright, so let's just try this one more time. We'll hit the add button. German aircraft. Multirole. Blum und Voss P210. And compare that. And there we go. Alright, finally. So we want to make sure that we, again, upgrade here so that we're seeing the best for each of these aircraft. Now, just so you know, whichever aircraft you choose last will go into the first slot here. So, a little annoying, but certainly something we can live with. All right. So, in terms of armament, The XP-72 has a slight edge over the P-210. Bombs and rockets, a huge advantage over the P-210 goes to the XP-72. Survivability, again, a huge advantage over the P-210. And hit points, again, huge advantage over the P-210. Come down here to optimum airspeed, and that's kilometers per hour. The P-210 has a slight advantage over the XP-72. Not, anything significant, but it is there. Stall speed for the XP-210 is much higher than that for the XP-72, and optimum altitude is the same for those two aircraft. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea about the XP-72 as compared to other aircraft. And let's head back to our hangar, and we'll go from there. Now we're going to take this aircraft into a battle and see how it performs. Okay, so we have drawn the Road to Rome Ascension map, and we are over on this side over here, so we are going to go over to the garrison first, and then we will, depending upon whether we have some ground attack aircraft from the enemy going here, we'll either go there, or more likely we will head over here to the air base.
Attention! You are entering the zone controlled by the enemy.
The reason why I wouldn't necessarily want to go over to the mining plant is it is not defended by air defense aircraft. So while we can destroy some targets there, I don't know if we'll be able to do enough to actually take the plant without assistance from fellow teammates.
Show me what you can do, pilots. Let's roll.
Okay, so boost wise, you see it has a 20-second boost. Now, a lot of the planes we reviewed say that it has a good boost, and when it comes down to it, we see that it actually is not that great. And this aircraft is pretty fast here, as you can tell. Zooming along. Let's see. Now you can kind of see the maneuverability here. I'm using air brakes and a combination of air brakes and extended flaps to turn better. You can really see the high rate of fire of these machine guns. Really fun to watch, really. Let's drop a bomb here. Okay. So I am thinking that we are just going to go ahead and head over here to the airfield.
The enemy is concentrating forces near
see
the
what
airfield.
we can do there. Zoom in here and see if we can take out this enemy aircraft. And I think we're taking some damage here. Up some airspeed, and unfortunately we Just didn't have control over the aircraft because of the damage that we took there. So let's see where our respawn options are. Looks like we only have one option here. So we'll head back here to the airfield and help our team. I like to save some of the engine boost for when we need it, critical moments. So, you know, with the 20-second burst, I might, for example, want to save about 10 of that. So you see we're not heating up at all. Our guns are staying pretty cool there. So overheating is not a major problem like we see on many cannon armaments. I mean, I am just holding down the trigger there. The cannons, you couldn't do that at all. See here, we're being shot at by these anti-aircraft. See if we can take those out. For this lower health target over here. We'll go with this one then. So when you got these zigging and zagging aircraft, it's a lot easier when you have these high rate of fire machine guns to catch them as they're going back and forth. And again, you see I'm just holding down the trigger there, not having to give much worry to armament overheating. For this lower health target here. You can see we've taken some damage. Like our pilot maybe injured or steering there. So this aircraft is obviously going slower than ours, so I'm going up and down and rolling to kind of slow my aircraft down, and I'm using the extend flaps and the air brakes to just help me stay behind him. So you don't want to go past him. I got to take out this flying attack aircraft here.
They've almost got us.
And you know, when you're close to the ground, you can tell a lot more just how fast you're going. So you're not going to do well in a turn and burn fight, but when you do, you are able to get on an enemy. They really feel the pain. So we'll come over here, get a little distance here, hopefully try to heal up a little bit.
We cannot support you any longer.
Get back in the fight. So, you know, if you have to get out of the fight and heal up, do it. right? Use your terrain and just for fun, I figure we'll taking some rear turret fire. So we'll duck out.
You've done what you could.
And
Go back
survived because of that. So don't be afraid to, duck out of the combat if something's getting the better of you. You got to do what you got to do. Okay, flames in the sky. Conqueror. Flying Raider badge. Lambert medal, #1 spot. And our grade 3 fighter result. And folks, that's the first time I've flown this aircraft, so you can see it's it does pretty well. It feels good flying it as long as you're not getting in those turning dogfights. You can really wreck face with the machine guns on this aircraft, and you can do some decent damage on the ground as well. So just looking at our stats here, we destroyed 9 enemy aircraft, did a little over 10,000 in damage to ground targets. I mean, we didn't focus too much on the ground targets, but it's something. And let's see here. There were 2 human pilots on our team, and presumably their team as well. They always seem to make sure there are equal numbers of human pilots, and the human pilots did constitute the #1 and #2 positions on each one of these teams. We had a Yak 3 over here for our counterpart in the top position. Yak 3, 12 enemy aircraft shot down, so good for him. No damage to ground targets. And let's see here, we were able to capture 2 sectors, so that was good. And so this, let's see, this Lambert medal is awarded for earning at least 400 capture points in a single sortie with a multi-role fighter. The Flying Raider badge is achieving maximum efficiency in completing the aircraft type specific mission, sector attack. And Conqueror is awarded for earning at least 450 capture points in a single battle. And of course, Flames in the Sky is destroying an enemy aircraft by setting it on fire. Now you notice with our standard ammunition that we did quite well in setting fires with this aircraft. So I would say that the standard ammunition does just fine. Let's pull that up again. You can see, I mean, if you compare that to the high explosive incendiary, it's got 4 points into fire chance, 5 points, whereas the universal has 4. But, in contrast, the high explosive incendiary only has a muted 1 point into critical damage. So you may be missing out on some critical damage there that you do get with the universal ammunition. So something to think about there. All right. So I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and I think that this is a really good-looking aircraft. Really has some terrific features to it. The armaments here, the rockets and the bombs, just look bad to the bone, I would say. It's a fun aircraft to fly. I really like it. And I hope if you have an opportunity to fly it that you will enjoy it as well.